I've been asking myself a fun question for the last week. Just simply asking myself why Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather didn't work. Why did that bomb? The fight was canceled. Bring you guys up to speed. That fight, quotations, was canceled due to lack of interest. When I tell you that I've asked myself for a week why, this industry and this sport goes in waves. And if you've studied the sport long enough, you can generally recognize what wave we're on, and then you can extend and kick the can 6, 7, 8 months before what's currently in fashion goes out of fashion and one of the old waves comes back in. This one is different. It's different. I mean, the world of boxing right now is going in a very clear direction of just doing these celebrity style fights, bringing in big names. And it wouldn't matter if you were a big name, Nate Robinson from the NBA, or you were a big name from KSI, was like a singer, the Paul brothers, YouTube star, right? I mean, you get it. It doesn't really matter where that name came from. Bringing Mike Tyson, Roy Jones back. Those things are fun and those things are interesting. And those are the two words that I will always use when discussing a fight. Fought in the UFC, went and fought in Bellator. One of the main questions I ever got asked by anybody who could ask me a question is, what is the difference between the two? To which I broke down in my own interpretation to a smaller level of what is the difference in Scott Coker and Dana White. I felt like that was the question I was being asked. And there was a lot more similarities between Bellator and the UFC. Distinguishing and identifying the difference between Scott Coker and Dana White is a little bit tricky. I will tell you this. If Dana White is looking to book a fight, he is looking for one word: interesting. If you ever pitch an idea to Dana, he may not tell you yes or no. If he responds with the word interesting, things are looking good for you. When Scott Coker is booking a fight, he is looking for the word fun. If you bring him a match or you pitch him an idea and he comes away and looks at you without committing and says fun, things are looking good. So I use both of those words from the two guys that I learned from. And if a fight is neither interesting nor fun, I tend to scrap it. But I use this as evidence, still trying to break down and deduce why Floyd and Paul didn't work. What is it about that recipe that is not repeatable and is different than the other side shows that we saw? And there is an answer. It's just important to identify what the answer is, right? You can burn the audience a number of times if you slip in delivering for the audience. The sport of boxing, if you followed, you do not have very many nights that were meaningful, that you can take with you and you built memories of your childhood or high school or college that you could tie back to a fight. It is a painfully boring sport until it's not. Every now and then, something happens. Something is about to happen. With Fury versus Joshua, by example. But for the most part, it's painful. And Floyd, who has made a career of laughing at the audience and has openly let us in on the gag that he is laughing at us, at some point that comes back to bite you. And the fight with Paul, it's a tough one. Why am I watching? I cannot watch for Floyd's brilliance. Paul is not skilled enough to bring out any of that brilliance. Do I hate Paul enough that I just want to see Paul get beat up? If that is the question and that is the answer and that is what drives from a monetary standpoint, what is going to drive that spectacle fight forward, then you would want to put Paul in there with Tyson. You see the difference. Mike Tyson is search and destroy. He's going to find you. He's going to hurt badly anything in front of him to the best of his ability. Floyd Mayweather has rewritten the story of lackluster performances, i.e., the Conor McGregor fight. He rewrote a narrative to serve him at the time, which is that I carried Conor. That comes back to bite him at a time where he's now trying to tell the audience, I'm going to come out and I'm going to destroy the guy in front of me. Do you see the problem? No, he never carried Conor. He tried to rework the story. I understand these things, but I'm not a mark. The audience that Floyd is trying to serve is the marks, and they only know what their leader told them, which served him at the time. There was nothing monetizable. There was nothing to sell. There was nothing to gain from rewriting the story of having carried Conor McGregor and having to go 30 minutes with a guy who had never done it. It just helped to put a little bit of ice on the swollen bruise that was Floyd's ego at the time, but it's now coming back to bite him. If we're to believe that Floyd is going to carry a guy, then what is the difference if he's in there with a trained boxer or he's in there with a YouTube guy that doesn't belong in there? What is now the sell? That we're going to see a few minutes of silliness? Or that this YouTube guy that we don't like is going to go out and take a thumping and that's worth our $29.95? I mean, do you see the problem? I still don't feel that I fully have a grasp of why that bombed. I would not have bet that bombed. I would have thought if you bring two celebrities together, you can stick them in there. I realize that that's a broad stroke, but it seems like the world of boxing is doing it. If I was to juxtapose that fight, which was so uninteresting that it got canceled, against Jake Paul and Ben Askren, there are some very different competitive storylines that you can look at. You can argue that Paul isn't very good, and then you can argue that Askren's hands weren't great for the world of MMA, and now you can create a story about, well, which is better? Really good hands for YouTube or okay hands for MMA? But you still have a story that's based around competitiveness, that's based around two guys that don't want to lose. I don't want to be better than the YouTube guy with my hands, and I don't want to lose to the guy with bad hands for MMA. I mean, you see where it starts to matter. You start to realize where you have meaning. And you also don't know who's going to win. Every story is tough to tell if the audience already knows the ending. That is what Floyd and Logan were up against, to no fault of either's. Floyd's just really good at it, and Logan just doesn't do it. And it was one of these things to plant a seed of doubt in anyone's mind is one of the things that Logan failed greatly to do. He could have come out and had the truth on his side, which the truth being Floyd weighs 100 pounds and I weigh 190 pounds. Floyd is clean and I stick a needle in my ass every Wednesday at 8 p.m. He could have just come out and told the truth as a way of garnering some level of attention. I don't know why that fight bombed. I don't fully know. I know that I've got a hold of the right tool, but possibly by the wrong end. I do want to understand, though. I have to know everything. I got to be the smartest guy in the room at all times. And this is one of the few things that have come up over a period of time that I don't fully get. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit till I get this. But something there missed.